We are seeking to make this transition from a sort of 2D internet to a 3D internet. These technologies erupted incredibly quickly, spread like wildfire around the world. The governance guardrails shouldn't be retrofitted onto technology.
What is a company like Meta going to look like 10 years from now?
Well, our big ambition, which I think we've been very overt in sort of spelling out to the world, particularly when we announced the new name for the company, Meta, last autumn, is to be hopefully an important player in the construction of what is in effect an entirely new computing platform, what's loosely called the Metaverse. I think the sort of shorthand way of thinking about that is that we are seeking to make this transition from a sort of 2D internet to a 3D internet.
How is government and governance going to connect with the Metaverse? So how do you see, as Metaverse evolves over the next 5 to 10 years, how's that going to change in the way in which governments function, diplomacy happens? How do they plug into this?
Well, I think one of the things I hope, it might turn out to be a somewhat naive hope, but if you look back over the last 15, 20 years, I think we can all accept that, particularly through the social media age, these technologies erupted incredibly quickly, spread like wildfire around the world. You know, our apps and services are used by close to half the world's population now. It's a sort of mind-boggling number. And in many respects, I think we've been almost retrospectively now trying to apply the governance rules to those technologies, you know, not quite as an afterthought, but sort of after the technology's already become so prevalent in society. I mean, here in India, for instance, many of my discussions are this new, you know, sort of tripod of legislation, the Digital India Act, the Telecoms Act, the Data Protection, the DPDP Act. These are all foundational pieces of legislation. The same is happening in Europe, the same debate is happening in Australia, in the UK, in the US. But of course, if you step back for a minute, you think to yourself, well, in an ideal world, those should have come not exactly first, but at the inception of the technologies. The governance guardrails shouldn't be retrofitted onto technology. And so I think one of the things that certainly at Meta we're trying to do is, and we fund many academics around the world, developers. Yesterday I announced that we're helping fund 100 developers in this country on a fellowship to work on some open source developments in the Metaverse. What we're trying to do is, in a sense, have those foundational governance debates at the same time as the technology is being developed, so that you don't get this dislocation between technology and governance.
What is your primary concern with regards to the future of data governance, which I think is fair to say we can no longer call global data governance? Would you agree?
I think there is always an underlying danger, particularly at a time, and look, I was in politics for 20 years in European and British politics. I totally understand and respect the wholly legitimate instinct that politicians and governments have around the world to assert what is commonly called digital sovereignty. Of course I understand that. Politicians are accountable to their people. They are there to serve their communities, and quite understandably, politicians feel the world over that they can only serve their community if they somehow insist that they are in charge of their bit of the sort of slice of the data cake, if I can put it like that. The problem, of course, is that that's not the way the internet works. The internet foundationally works on the idea that data flows openly across borders. So I think the balance we're trying to strike in this evolving debate is to ensure that governments, the Indian government is the same as many other governments around the world, are entitled to discharge their wholly legitimate interests in regulating on issues like privacy and content and licensing and so on and so forth, and transparency and accountability, but try and do so in a way which doesn't undermine the ingenuity of the internet, which is undoubtedly based on an immense amount of cross-border, fluidity.